Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the Mbungi discussions in the Mbungi. And I want to get straight into it with episode 2, with the much needed discussion on security issues. And I consider it global security issues because national security issues for one country is more or less the same national security issues for all other countries. So when we're talking about security challenges, we're talking about national, regional, or international. So this is discussions for the global village. When we in the Mbungi, we're talking about the global village. There might be certain things would be specific for my nation, Trinidad and Tobago, or the Caribbean, CARICOM. But if we are honest with ourselves, the things that we face in our individual nations is basically the same things we face across the board with everybody else. Unless you are one of the lucky ones who don't really have certain issues that other nations face. And then when we dive deeper into it and we do certain research and we pull certain evidence and we go into historical facts, we realize that specific nations are experiencing the things they're experiencing for specific reasons. And we'll get into all of that. Now I want to start out local. Now my nation, Trinidad and Tobago, God bless it. God bless Trinidad, God bless Tobago. Now we are experiencing a spike in crime in a different way, although crime has been an issue ever since. It's quite similar to Jamaica. And if you look at the challenges and issues that Jamaica face and Trinidad face, you're going to see a lot of similarities. Now, I had been involved in a class, Masters in Carnival Studies. And people tend to have their opinion about carnival because immediately we just associate it to just fetting, drinking, wildness, sex, madness, and out of time in behavior. But it's so much more to that. And is within studying in this class and going through certain topics, particularly the supposed or attempted establishment of the Federation of the West Indies and the dissolution of the Federation of the West Indies, that researching this attempt to unite the Caribbean, or I should say the Commonwealth nations, under the leadership of the Queen of England, Britain, the colonizers of a huge part of the world, that you get to discover that the economic, social, and judicial issues that these countries face, particularly Trinidad and Tobago, who had been two of the main and most developed and powerful of the other Caribbean nations, are now plagued in a certain type of way that you're now seeing posts and bulletins and alerts coming out from the US, and I think I even saw Canada, the US and Canada sending out alerts to their natives, their nationals, to be careful, to the point that people are even saying they might want to skip Carnival 2024 in Trinidad and Tobago because of the spike in crime rate, that people not safe. And yes, the place heated, yes, the place hot, and they say that Port of Spain and certain hotspot areas that have been labeled hotspot because it was created that way, and we tend to ignore the cause. Now, in the little law that I've been studying, because I'm trying to understand, and I've been on this quest and this mission to continue the initiative by Kerwin Fresh Phillip, a deceased community leader, regardless of if they want to call him a gang leader or what. He was somebody that was looked up to by his community. He did what he could to provide for his community. Forgive him for the ways in which it may have caused harm to others. But there was a point in his life when he really took it to a positive level, and it even cost him his life in attempting to try to bring an end to the gang violence and bring peace by way of a peace treaty that ended up seeming to be an ID parade of all these gang leaders, and most, if not all of them, were killed. And he was one of the first to go down. Now, this mission that I took on to reestablish this, to reassess his intentions, to reassess the role the government played in trying to get this initiative on board, to reassess the opposing voices, and I'm not saying the opposition party, I'm saying opposing voices, be it in the community, be it wherever, anybody who opposed this initiative, to reassess why, to reassess what went wrong that caused him to lose his life and the others to not understand or to see for what it was that ended up causing them to lose their lives, and to figure out what laws govern or policies implemented that could really get this peace treaty or this situation with the gangs and the gun violence to completely end, to come to a complete stop. We're not talking about no reduction in crime. The initiative within this company that I have started, there might be a government change or something might happen at a government level, because we know how sometimes, let's call a spade, and let's be real with what goes on. There are a lot of initiatives that are set up that work for the community, and when a government shifts, they stop it. And most of the times they stop it because it doesn't benefit their community, or it benefits the other community too much, because it means that that community has a chance of advancing or leveling up. And this has been the history of politics in this nation, and I'm quite certain in other nations. Hence, you have the culture. If we go back to historical facts, we see, particularly using Jamaica as an example, there's a documentary that said that when Jamaica established herself politically, you had these political gangs being implemented to force people to vote in a particular way. And from those political gangs, they manifested and metastasized into this tumor that sucked and killed the essence of what the politicians were supposed to do in that step of taking ownership, freedom, liberation from the colonizers or the Europeans. It completely strayed away from what independence and liberation and to be a republic is about. So from the establishment of these political parties, you had these political gangs being encouraged. And I didn't know if these politicians at the point in time didn't foresee that this thing would have turned into what it turned into, what it is now, that you had the General Bob Marley having to put his life on the line to try to bring these parties together, literally put on a concert, had the two opposing dominant parties literally had to take the leader's hands. The man was shot at by his own people, no matter how much he was loved, because again, money talks and bullshit walks, and the system has always found a way to play on the insecurities and the lack that the people suffer from. And it's not because they just get up and born, so it's because these oppressive states and environments were intentionally created. And I always say, like our Minister of National Security right now, and every other Minister of National Security, and every other police commissioner, and every other whoever has to deal with security challenges of any nation. If you have been colonized, you will not see your way. If you have been one of those countries who had severely been oppressed by the spawns of colonialism and the strategies and the ways in which they found to suppress the growth and development of the people, you should not be surprised with what you're facing today. And to Trinidad and Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica, two of the main and the dominant players, two of the bigger, larger populated nations. If you look at the discussion in the Federation between Jamaica and Trinidad and the issues they had and why they couldn't agree. And mind you that the Federation was encouraged, quote unquote, encouraged by Britain. Now, I'm in a state right now where we are about what have we done with what we have done, according to the great Earl Lovelace. This question that he asked, what have we done with what we have done? And I am in the state now asking, before we could even say what have we done or what can we do, we have to assess what we did. Causation. Coming back to what I said with a little bit that I've been researching with law to be able to really get this peace treaty going, really not just to have a treaty, but to have a new way of how we operate in society, where human relations are concerned, that we could handle disputes and conflicts in a way that it doesn't have to result in violence, in crime, in manipulation, in theft, in anything oppressive and negative. We are adults, but we want to be pointing fingers at the younger generation. But we are adults and we can't deal with things in a way where somebody don't have to lose their life, or somebody don't have to be deprived of something or suffer in some kind of way. Now I bring it back to when you look at causation and cause, when you're dealing with justice and trying to find a solution for something, you have to find out what was the cause as the very first thing. And everybody in society always say, God, Trinidad is this and that, and whatever nation is experiencing, whatever the citizens are the first ones to say, oh God, and these politicians, and we always put it in the politicians' hand. Now, yes, they are responsible because we put them in charge, because they have a specific knowledge, they've studied certain things to be able to run a country. So we put them in charge. But remember, we are still the power as well. We just delegate responsibilities to these people because they have a specific set of knowledge to be able to move us forward, right? But then when they are in power, we as ourselves as citizens have this standoff. We pull ourselves off in a sense, because now all the responsibility is on them. The responsibility is on us as well, because if the citizens refuse to accept and force the judicial system to own the fact that everything that is happening now has a genesis. We're talking about the Bible. The first thing in the Bible is Genesis. So let's bring that biblical concept into reality, into how we're dealing with justice. Genesis. There's a beginning. For anything that happens, there's a start, you have a middle, and you have an end, or you have a part 1 into part 2, part 3, a world without end. Because unless we deal with what the reality of the cause is, generations and generations to come will either deal with a reduction in crime or increase in crime, or we'll never get to a complete cessation and dissolution of the system of crime. And this is why I feel so compelled and took on this challenge to drop everything and focus my whole life on establishing this company called the Mbungi to deal with. We focus on the cause. We're not caught up on what's going on now and what and all that. We focusing on the cause, because if you want to address a situation, if you are genuine about fixing something or healing a problem or healing a cut or a wound, you have to deal with what is the cause. We have to treat it as if we are a doctor, and not the type of doctors who just given us something to just ease it for a while so you could come back because we need money, because the medical business is about exploiting and taking money from the people. We are the herbalists, we are the shamans who dealing with the cause of it. Because if you never come back, it means that I did my job and the universe will bless me in another way. And this is how we have to approach law and governance in this country. This is how we have to approach justice and the judicial system in this country. So if we're talking about the cause, and if we deal with the perpetrators who are responsible for the reason most of the Caribbean and other nations in the world who are experiencing what they're experiencing, if we refuse to call those perpetrators to the fore, then we will never fix the problem. And we'll always be in this state, and the generations to come, again, as I say, will either deal with a reduction in crime or an increase in crime. Never a complete end to crime. Now, I am researching the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court and the United Nations. Now, this issue in Palestine has just basically shed a light in a significant way to what South Africa was going through, what Africa is going through, what Haiti has been going through and is going through, what Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago is going through, what Castro is fighting for in Cuba, what Venezuela has been experiencing, what everywhere in the world where there's oppression, where the colonizers pass through. These governing bodies or these organizations have been established to uphold human rights. And they've established themselves such a way that we have given them authorization to take specific actions when there's an infringement on human activity or human rights or rights in general. Now, when we look at this issue in Palestine, when we look at the issue in Africa, in Congo, when we look at the issue in Haiti, when we look at the issues in Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica in particular, even though we are not experiencing the conflict in such a way or at the severity of Haiti and specific places in Africa, it is on the rise. We may have other ways or other things happening that might seem to mask it or make it not seem that severe, but it is on the rise. Now, when we're talking about human rights protection, we are talking about playing a crucial role in promoting and protecting human rights worldwide. And if the International Criminal Court of Justice, I've been researching the organizational structure, its mission, its goals, and its objectives. And one of the main things inside of there makes me understand that this International Criminal Court of Justice is a big joke. And it was only established to more or less create the facade and more or less shield and protect the colonizers from what they have done so that they don't have to take accountability for what they did. because at some point reparations must go down for the victims and the oppressed. And one of those main laws that they have, or rules within the International Criminal Court of Justice, is that anything that predates the year 2000 is not admissible in their court. So we want to understand why it has taken so long for these people to completely shut down that war in Palestine and stop Netanyahu and stop America from funding and all the other organizations and individuals and stakeholders who are benefiting from the oppression of Palestine and the annexation of certain areas and the annexation in Africa and Congo and the pillaging and theft of resources and genocide of our citizens. Because when I'm talking about our now, it's not just Trinidad and Tobago, I'm talking about the whole world, the global village. When we talk in the Mbongi, we're talking about the international village. You touch one, you touch all. If everything that is happening now in the world, both positive and negative, had a start that predated the year 2000. And let's focus on the negative now. That issue with Palestine and Israel did not start today. That was since in the 60s and even before. The issues Haiti facing now. Come on, we had a whole revolution with Toussaint and Dessalines to get them so-called freedom to where we are now. That inspired other revolts across the Caribbean and other places. Congo is still being pillaged. Kenya, Zimbabwe, everywhere. Castro had to take his own people, sacrifice things with his people to come to go over to Africa to assist Mandela and these people. Like, come on. You think that mass migration that just happened in Venezuela was just so? Because these places have oil, these places have resources. And the thing is, the things that I'm saying, I know a lot of people know already. And the thing is, a lot of what we're saying is common knowledge. It may not be in the textbooks in the way that we want it to. And they're doing everything in the US to keep certain information out, which is again an infringement on human rights. Because if you are blocking specific information for people to get to understand their reality so that they can heal and advance, that is an infringement on human rights. And I cannot understand, I shouldn't say I cannot understand. I understand why these things are not being allowed. It's because it is protecting the instigators and innovators and engineers of these wars. We're going back to Reagan and his era and Bush and these fellas who put the crime and the drugs, who use places like Colombia and Mexico and these places to make and produce these drugs. Behind the scenes, they put guns and they oppress these places, put them in a state of desperation, and then put these things inside of there, the coke and the crack and the drugs and stuff to mess up their head, keep them addicted, attach a certain value to it, put it in the black market so the value increases. So that these people would see this as the quickest way to turn over money, because at the end of the day, whether it was Pablo Escobar, whoever it is, whether he is a drug leader, a drug lord, or the best person on the planet, Jesus Christ, or whoever it is, you still have a child or a family or community to take care of at the end of the day. Regardless of how you decide to do it, the intention for an unnatural and innate intention of a human being is to provide for their families, to provide for themselves, because it literally is survival, and then we've created a world where it has to be survival of the fittest. Now, that survival mode where it has to be survival of the fittest, where I had to kill you to get, that is in the animal kingdom. That's why when God created man and animal, the difference between them and us is that we were given a certain level of consciousness, so we don't have to do it like how they do it, the animals. That's why we have barter systems, and then you have our indigenous African people could show us, you know, from the Congo and the Bantu traditions and the Pygmies, and I should say how they engaged in human relations and how they worked along with the tribes, how they shared the resources and the land, how the chiefs understood their responsibility as custodians of land and a community, as opposed to there's mine, and you know, that colonized way of wanting to just exploit and take everything for themselves. And these people, these colonizers, they came and they destroyed those systems. They hid those systems from us. They destroyed the legacy from the Upper Volta, come straight down to Kemet. They tried to destroy the statues, they tried to destroy the monuments, they tried to destroy the history. And a lot of things they still can't destroy. So they find ways to mess with our brains within slavery and the Willie Lynch. Whether it is, I heard that the Willie Lynch syndrome and the letter and that whole experience was just something made up. Regardless of what we as a human race is experiencing, traumatic experiences that reflects that we feel less than, we were made to feel less than, we were oppressed, we have been suppressed, access to certain information has been denied for us to know who we truly were, and those who fought to make sure that we remember ourselves and how the universe works have been killed and assassinated. Reparations for all of that. Now, when you have these institutions and organizations like the UN and the International Court of Justice claiming to set up to be here to uphold, promote, and protect the human rights of the globe, to uphold Universal Declaration of Human Rights, to monitor human rights violations, to conduct investigations, to engage in advocating, to hold government officials and organizations accountable for their actions in infringing on human rights. When you have these institutions saying that they're doing that, like the Privy Council and the Supreme Court, and yet still the last court, which is the International Court of Justice, when all else fails, the last resort court, says that anything before the year 2000 is not admissible in court, then what is the point of the International Court of Justice when everything that we're experiencing predates that? It means that I cannot bring evidence that